Welcome to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development, our regular meeting agenda for September 13th. I want to acknowledge that the Property and Development team are just meeting every single day practically to get through property and development appeals. And then we're also the team on appeal rotation citywide. We're really proud of that, and we'll be there for you each and every appeal. But today is just our regular meeting, and I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake Forey First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Need a motion, both from the previous minutes moved by Councillor Duncan, that was carried unanimously. Need a motion too for all the addendum reports and some motions that we've got today, as well as
one item of new business.
One item of new business. So moved by Councillor Dobson. All those in favor, carried unanimously. And then we'll move into delegations. I want to move some more motions, but I don't think our senior committee clerk, Leah Cowan, will let me. Hazel Boris, the Director of Planning, Property and Development, also with us today. Matt Allard, Councillor Matt Allard, Councillor Sean Dobson, Councillor Evan Duncan. There'll be many more. Gord Chappelle, Jeff Patton, many more. Mark Pite with us today, but for now, I think first up is Councillor Brian Mays.
Yes, Councillor Mays is joining us via Zoom today with respect to Report 10.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning from COVID headquarters here. Apologies for the quality of my voice or occasional wild coughing fits as they may arise. I have three comments, one negative, and it's not really about the report, and the other two positive. I feel I have to lead off by saying there's some activity on Twitter saying that it's all right that I currently do not have a seat on any policy, on any standing policy committee, because I can still appear in delegation at other committees. So that is true. Anyone can appear in delegation at any committee. It is certainly not true to suggest that that's the same as having a vote on or actually sitting on any committee. There's, as far as I can tell, and the clerks have verified this, no actual precedent for this, but here we are. So I did want to correct that. I think if the mayor's office representative is going to say it's all right that I'm not on a standing policy committee because I can just appear in delegation, I'm going to have to correct that. I don't think that's being respectful to the people of St. Vital. So, on the other hand, the positives. It's also suggested on Twitter that I can just ask, or frankly, come to other. It's my problem, and I should come to other councillors to ask them to put me on some committee. You will be relieved to know that I'm not going to beg you all to put me on any standing policy committee. I guess I'll just sit out till November. That seems so.
I think you have the strength of policy voice here today, but you're to be speaking on the topic. I don't think we adjudicate people's Twitters here.
No, and I have better things to do than get involved in Twitter wars with Paul staffers. So if anybody picked up the phone to call me, I could have resolved that way. But I guess that was a decision that other people made. So the good news is I'm not asking you to move any motion related to my current not sitting on any committees. The report that I am registered to speak on is entitled, I believe it's number 10. It's about unimproved lanes. The comment I made to James Veach was, this report is shockingly good. And I felt that I should probably repeat that publicly. So this is the first report I can remember that actually admits that gravel lanes throughout the city are not in passable condition. They're not in great condition at all. We've had this sort of, to use an Allardism, a tautological approach from Public Works that we have to maintain them in a passable condition. Therefore, they're in a passable condition. Problem solved. Well, they're not often in a passable condition. You know that, Madam Chair. You've moved into, I think, third place there in terms of the highest percentage of lanes in the city. Councillor Allard's managed to get so many done through local improvement, through his efforts, through the efforts of his constituents, that he's down now just into fourth place. St. Vital, unfortunately, remains well in the lead, double the amount of any other ward. So it is a live issue in my ward, though perhaps of little concern in other wards. I think to represent the people of St. Vital, I should come forward and speak about it. So what's the nature of the motion? The motion originally was for future development purposes, treat gravel lanes as unimproved. This arises out of the infill guidelines as they then were, where there was a rather odd differentiation between improved lanes, which included all the paved ones, all the gravel ones, right? Hundreds and hundreds of lanes. And over here, unimproved, the 2 mud lanes in the entire city. One's by a golf course, the other one I can't remember. This seemed a false dichotomy. So to the credit of the staff, they talked to me about this. They didn't produce particular recommendations, which I support. The idea here was basically keep this in mind as you go forward on bucket, whatever the buckets were, 2 and 3, 3.2. Perhaps Director Boris can correct my citation there if necessary. In any event, very shockingly good report. Admits the lanes are subject to degradation. They often aren't passable. What is to be done? To the credit of the author, who came around driving with me. In fact, we had to skip some lanes because one of the planning staff was pregnant at the time and we were reluctant to even drive down some of these lanes. They were that bad. And that should tell you something when you're not even willing to take a pregnant, somebody pregnant down a lane because that should be an indication they're not passable. But in any event, what is to be done? The recommendation is that gravel lanes in future considerations are to be treated distinct from other improved rights of way. I can live with that. I think we'll see what exactly that means. My view has been, as we press forward on the 4plexes everywhere, that should not include lanes that are gravel. Hopefully that will be the outcome of this. To our credit, we have already moved in the, I guess we can't call them the infill guidelines anymore, the mature community infill bylaw that we won't have lot splits where there are gravel lanes except if you have underlying lots of record. And Madam Chair, to your credit, as chair of this committee, you helped steer through that we wouldn't have triplexes in the mature communities. On gravel lanes, we recognize the reality that these lanes are different. They're differently funded. They're differently maintained. They're entirely different from paved lanes. We don't treat paved roads the same as gravel roads when we densify, nor should we treat the lanes that are of different substances. So, as I do have a voice, at least in delegation, I would request that you pass this. You receive the report of the information and bear in mind what is said here, that these should be treated distinctly from paved lanes. The report recognizes the degradation and the poor drainage. There are far more, I believe 9 times, possibly 10 times more paved lanes than gravel lanes. So for those who would say, well, this will just destroy potential for densification. No, it wouldn't. It would recognize the reality that the city has failed these folks and the lanes are in terrible condition. They aren't passable large parts of the year. So shockingly good report. Thank you to Mr. Veach, to the director, to Mr. Chislin. I think it's a good place to have this in hand as we head into the debate about, this won't matter particularly on the malls and corridors. It will matter particularly on the 4plexes debate. So final comment, I guess there's a passage about the pulvomixer. That is done and not done badly to date. It is, however, sporadic. My assistant and I were out door knocking last week, and there's one stretch in St. Vital that's getting pulvomixed. About 10 houses on Riverbend, 10 houses backing onto it on Robertson. I think we're doing 13 lanes in Councillor Santos's ward this year for the pulvomixer. So it's done in pockets in the city. It's certainly not all in my ward. In fact, only one. I think none for you, Madam Chair, this year, and none for Councillor Orlico. So it's a start, the pulvomixer. It is not, however, the answer to the question here. The answer to the question is what's being said. These lanes should be treated distinctly from paved lanes as we go forward with the densification discussion. That is probably more than anyone wanted to hear, except possibly Councillor Allard, who's used to these speeches by now. So thank you for listening to me. Apologies for the emphysema. Sorry, sounds like I've been smoking for the last 20 years or something here, but apologies for the quality of my voice, but happy to take any questions if there are any.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
So through you to Councillor Mays, isn't it true that some lanes cannot be pulver mixed for things like underground pipes and things?
Very good. Yes. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, we had the notice went out on Moore Avenue saying we're coming to Pulvermix, and then the notice went out saying no, we're not, because there's a gas line underneath here, and that, my friends, is a vote loser. I can assure you of that. When you tell people you're going to fix their decrepit lane and then you don't. Good point by Councillor Elliott. The Pulvermixer, which is still in a pilot program phase, Cantor would want me to say that, and Cantor would be right in that. Yeah, it does have its limits. There's some lanes that you simply can't do it.
And then, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Mays, could we have I don't know, your commentary on what the difference is between an unimproved lane, a gravel lane, a chip seal lane, a concrete lane, a paved lane? What makes gravel different than those other classifications?
I believe that's the winner of the dullest question award for this year.
Hey. Yes. Order.
Perhaps to me. Yeah, I mean, the point here was the falseness of saying, in fact, we did have one wonderful map where the gravel ones were identified as unimproved, and I thought, I've done it. And then an immediate disclaimer from Public Works a few days later say, oh, no. Only 2 lanes in the whole city are unimproved. These, I can't even find them on the map. They're mud lanes. I'm not even sure where they are. Yeah, the real difference here is, I remember Councillor Gilroy saying to me once, and not to pick on Councillor Gilroy, she's saying, well, look, in the budget, we redo like 10 concrete lanes. They're listed out. So we do the same for gravel, right? And I said, no, we don't. We don't rebuild 10 a year. We don't re-gravel them. This was before the Pulvermixer. If you want to buy your way out of the problem, you can, although we have less and less funding to do that, but through a local improvement. So the dichotomy here, the difference here is gravel and mud, and there are like 2 mud lanes over on one side. That's really unimproved. And then on the other side, chip seal and asphalt and concrete lanes I would put on the other side. I think there are very few chip seal lanes. I can only think of tons of chip seal streets, and Duncan could speak to that more than I can, but not many chip seal lanes, I don't think.
Thank you. Good point.
All right, thank you for your time today in delegation. Please be well, and anytime I can back you up on procedural matters on Twitter, just please let me know. I want your policy mind come into committee of council anytime. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next councillor in delegation today.
So next is Councillor Wyatt from the Transgona Ward, who's speaking with respect to report 1.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for having me this morning. I can be very brief. I just wanted to thank you for this report today. I want to thank the public service, Madam Chair, who worked very hard on this over the last year. Bruce Pauls, who was just here, who just left the room. Our architect, who did an extensive condition assessment of the building, and I want to thank real estate as well. The building, we wanted to do this about $50,000 of my land dedication reserve for the purpose of determining the status of the Royal Mission Arena. As you know, the Royal Mission Arena was declared surplus to the city of Winnipeg. It was part of an arena strategy whereby we built a new arena at East End, a community club, for about $13.5 million at the time. We decommissioned the arena with the intent to sell it and market it. We attempted on 2 occasions, to my knowledge, when I was on council, to market it. We actually rezoned the land to RMFL, and at the height of the market, we weren't successful both times, and we were quite aggressive in the marketing. The challenge with the arena is that if you're going to put housing on the site, you have to demolish it. There's an uncertainty with regards to the environmental in the site. The facility used Freon. It also has asbestos. We don't know if the Freon leaked. So the cost of demolition could be anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million or more. The value of the land is not near that. We also have servicing issues there. The sewer pipe in the ground stops at the south end of the arena. We also have a water capacity issue or water pressure issue. So height is problematic there. So density. So it was many things that made it very problematic. So we're left with this facility. And I'm on the same page as yourself, Madam Chair, and the mayor to get out of facilities. I've probably, as a councillor, moved more land and got the city out of more buildings than many others. I just believe that if we have land, it should be in productive use, and we've done that across the ward. So I've said to the mayor and to other members of council, I'm very committed to seeing the site repurposed. So we did this condition index study. The building's in good shape. If we want to reopen it as arena, you have the numbers there, but we're not doing that. Bruce Pauls could probably better speak to that. The reality is to repurpose it or begin the repurposing of it, the next step we need is to do a business plan on the sustainability of converting it into a farmer's market. We have some amazing people. I want to thank Councillor Schreier of the Winnipeg Food Council. We've been working through the Winnipeg Food Council on this. There's a couple of amazing people, amazing women who have done tons of things in the food sector of our city, setting up Fireweed Co-op and other things. There's amazing things that are happening out there now with regards to food security. And the idea of having a business plan, we've identified a chartered accountant, a consultant to work with, and these young people who are so dedicated to help write the business plan over the next year to show and demonstrate and to reach out to vendors who would be making up, the concept would be to make up a permanent not-for-profit that would be running it on a sustainable basis, and that we would identify a capital budget, not from the city, but money raised from the federal government, provincial government tied to agriculture, and the not-for-profit foundation sector. Councillor Lukes, who has done a lot with St. Norbert Farmers Market, has described to me how she has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars with St. Norbert Farmers Market over the last year. They were able to put up a large tent structure. And so it is very doable. And as Bruce would say to you, whether it's $500,000 or $1 million, the challenge he had as an architect, he had a hard time deciding, well, what is it going to look like until we have a vendor or until we have the entity that's actually going to run it. But there's some minimum things that need to be done, such as washrooms, such as the door entranceway. But the site is unique, and the building is very sound. If you don't put a residential in it, it's commercial in terms of food and grocery. You don't have to touch the cement pad. You literally, and it's in good shape. The idea is to have the entranceway at the north. We have a large open site to the north for potential parking. It's an exciting idea. And the whole concept, of course, and by the way, I campaigned on this in the 2022 election, and people on the doorstep love the idea. I think partly it's because we just came through this pandemic a number of years ago, and food and food security, I think, is more relevant today than ever before. And if you listen to the infectious disease experts, they all say that in many of our lifetimes, we're going to unfortunately have another pandemic. And if you look at our grocery stores and where the food comes from, a lot of it comes from south of the border. And it's crucial, if we have another pandemic, heaven forbid, the Americans, I don't think, would hesitate to shut the border down in the event that we were not able to, let's say in the future, obtain a vaccine and there was an issue of food security there. We have to think of that future. And there's some amazing things happening in Manitoba. There's a company now that has set up a 10-acre indoor tomato farm growing in Dauphin. They're going to 40 acres. There's some amazing things happening across Manitoba in terms of food security, and we have some amazing people already on the scene here in Manitoba that we've already been meeting with, who are already supplying local food, local beef, vegetables, so on. And we want to really tie them in and to create an entity that will actually compete with the big box grocery stores who, they have a supply chain system based on zero inventory. Works great when everything's going tickety-boo, but the minute there's a crisis, God help us all. And we're really thinking, they've been doing this in Europe for decades, and decades. And really, we got to bring that back here. And I just want to tell you that, my Bob and Gigi had a farm on Highway 8, not far out of the city in St. Andrews. And they bought the farm in the 1930s. My Jeep actually borrowed money from the Anglican church right by the arena there, All Saints, and was able to buy 9 acres of land. He got to 100. It was a dairy farm, eggs, chickens, mixed farm. My Baba would ride into the north end with a donkey and a cart going up and down the street selling milk and eggs and cream. And then when my Gigi had enough money to buy a truck, he really thought he became a Canadian, you know. And my Baba would go to the North End Farmers Market that used to be on Main Street years ago, and there was one on Nairn Avenue. And it's kind of going back to the future. We almost have to recreate what we once had and that worked, and get away from these big corporates, or at least compete with them. I mean, just last fall, Weston was fined by the federal government $50 million for price setting in bread. What other things are they price setting on that we don't know about? And that was after a 2-year federal investigation. You know, we need food is who we are, what we put in our bodies. We are a temple. We are what we eat, as they say. And we really have to get back to that healthy living. I think Canadians and Manitobans and Winnipeggers are more educated and convinced of this than ever before. And so I just want to thank the committee for allowing us to entertain and do the work that we've done thus far. I'll be funding through my land dedication reserve, the balance to do the business plan. And the report is to receive his information, which is fine. We just don't want to see a for sale sign go up on it during the process and allow us, you know, we're probably going to take 6 months to a year to be able to do this. And then we'll be able to come back and give you an update on where we're at. And I'm excited about this. The community is excited about this. The Food Council is excited, and so is Councillor Schreier. And I want to thank him for his leadership as well. So thanks for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your time. I think there's questions. I got some correspondence from Daniel Mondor, who has been, wonderful on these issues on behalf of the St. Norbert Farmers Market. No doubt the content of which I'll forward to the department because it was in consideration of the 2 year-round farmers markets that we've got in Winnipeg. I'll forward that to the department. I want to make you aware.
Thank you. I made the mistake. I think it was on the TGOB or CBC. This will be the first indoor round, indoor market. And I think they kind of got upset about that. And I apologize later that I didn't recognize them for all the work they had. But we'll be relying on them for research for the business plan. So, you know,
Okay.
yeah.
Councillor Duncan, my question for you. Oh, okay. I thought I saw it. All right. Well, thanks for your time
Thank you.
today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll move on to Councillor Orlikow.
Councillor Orlikow is speaking with respect to report 11.
Hello, everybody again. See everybody. First of all, I want to thank all 3 councillors that were willing to lay this matter over. I appreciate it. To take that. Unfortunately, I had an important doctorate meeting I couldn't miss. That meeting went on forever. So for 3 of the councillors here who just gave me a little bit of respect on that, and I do appreciate that kindly. So why am I here today? I'm here today because my head's still quite heavy into the Housing Accelerator Fund file. I actually be having a meeting with Morgan Gear right after this one, and we've had some good meetings lately as well. And I'm not going to stop digging and looking at things and seeing avenues, and what's done is done. We know that, and so what is done is done. So that's going to be thinking about the future, where we're going. So first of all, we know that our Housing Accelerator Fund requires, it wasn't the 190 million we wanted, we got the 122 million. However, we still have to make these targets of the 14,000 target that we have over 3 years. And I'm not very comfortable. Again, I'm trying to get the data. That's one of the meetings I'll have today where we're at. But I think the mayor has been very clear about the need for increasing housing supply and housing affordability throughout the city of Winnipeg. We may disagree a little bit on how much and where, but we don't disagree that, you know, if housing is really important, it needs to be bigger than just River Heights, Port Garry, or the mature neighborhoods. We need to expand that model a bit more. I think again, I understand there's workloads, but I also understand that the department presently is already looking at 4 stories, 4plexes. So as they're looking at those kind of properties, where those could go, as we've heard in the past, as a policy, layering policy on policy, not sure how you can support a 4 story or 4plex and not support a triplex. I'm just not sure how that works. We only let you do a fourplex, but you can't do a duplex. Well, I don't know. Again, we'll leave that to the group. So I wanted to put it out there for the department and maybe and see what the committee wants to do going forward. That as the department is, we're looking at the 4 stories, fourplexes. They should consider in that basket the other forms of housing that are possible, like the triplexes, lot splits, duplexes, side-by-sides, triplexes. Again, to Councillor Mazes, not on gravel back lanes, but we've all heard that, and he's very consistent on that. So again, I'm not directing, I'm not saying. I think though there is an opportunity that we can ensure that we get that $122 million full, not just 3/4 of it, as we don't make the last totals. So that's my hope. And even if we surpass the 14,000, I think that's actually a good thing for everybody. So that's pretty well why I brought this forward, to expand the envelope from, mature neighborhoods and they have significant reasons why, I understand, because of the location. But I do believe there's opportunities beyond the 4 stories, fourplexes in other areas of the city as well. So that's why I come here today with that motion.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Any
through you.
questions? Yeah, Councillor Lard.
To be, just for research purposes, which report, are you speaking to, Council?
No report. This is coming out of the Housing Accelerator Fund.
Okay.
But there's no, we actually, crazy amount, that's why I'll be meeting tomorrow. We have no report on the Housing Accelerator Fund. We don't know the budget. We don't know where the money's going. We don't know timelines. We're not sure how those people were, how the units were for the affordable housing downtown were picked. We're a land I'm a little concerned about. I'd like to have a little more open and transparency about the program, so we have information. I don't know if there are certain councillors were involved in picking the grants for downtown. I don't know. Again, there's no motion coming to council to have us approve that. So again, I would like to see a little more transparency and openness, but there is no report on the Housing Accelerator Fund status yet. But I believe Maura Gear is planning to present one.
Okay, Madam Chair, just to be more specific in my question.
Yeah, sorry.
You're wondering what agenda item today?
No, right, no, just Councillor Loco mentioned vote, and I'd like to know which one, because I'm not sure which vote that was. You said thank you for 3.
Oh, laying it over. Laying the matter over.
The matter. Because Councillor Orlico, it's an extension of time. We laid item number 11.
11.
Citywide residential
Okay,
interest strategy
thank you.
over.
Sorry, that's the one.
Because Councillor Orlico wanted to speak to it, and wasn't able to, so it's
Okay,
here
thank
this
you.
month and he's able to. Anything further, councillors? In terms of transparency, what are you looking for, Councillor Orlico? There's been a number of votes on council that determined the path forward on the Housing Accelerator Fund. I think you
But-
might have dissatisfaction with
no,
how they
no.
ended up.
Well,
But
sure,
what are you
budget.
looking for?
A budget. What money and how much money is going to those categories?
In terms of the 7 categories of priorities for housing.
So how's that
Accelerator.
going? Who's doing what? A little more details on what that means. How our targets were, I know I saw in the paper, but we have no report so far of where we are with our targets and how we doing. I've never
The
seen.
Units of 14,000 units.
Yeah, how we're doing that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the actual report as well. Hope to get a chance to actually read it. Because we know when that Housing Accelerator Fund was accepted, it was a last minute bounce back and forth. I knew what we did with the mature neighborhood ones. But again, when the mandate came down from the federal government, that may have significantly changed things from our initial application that I did see. But so I want to see the revised application. I not just myself, I think council should. And again, that's what I mean with Maura Gear for, to see if what the report coming forward is going to entail.
I think that's doable.
Good.
Thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.
Next up,
Next is Councillor Schreier from the Elmwood East Kildonan Ward to be heard with respect to report 1.
Councilor Schreier.
Hey, good morning.
Roland Mitchner Arena, sir.
Yeah, so there's no point in going over what Councillor Wyatt has already explained. He's been working on this for over a year. To our knowledge, at least through the Winnipeg Food Council, of which Russ Wyatt is a member as well this year. And so on this basis, he has an interesting idea, as he's explained it. And so for the purposes of my being here now, as it pertains to this item on the Property Planning and Development Standing Committee, my request is specifically just to keep our options open and therefore to take the Roland Michener Arena off of the surplus list. So that way we can keep our options open to see if there's any greater potentiality here. We've already had an assessment being done for about $40,000 paid for by, I believe, through Councillor Wyatt's Land Dedication Reserve Fund. So he's taking care of that. We've seen through the assessment that renovations would take between $5.5 to $8 million to bring it up to scratch. And at this point, I do not foresee any greater use. There has been no takers of the arena at this point, and seeing that there is potential here, possibility for use by the city for the common good. The point here today would be to take it off of the surplus list and continue to explore these potentialities as Councillor Wyatt's discussed.
Do you see any barrier to just continuing the good councillor's work, administratively, if we receive this as information? Because I don't. I think it stands alone as an excellent report that he can use and you can use in your own right to continue on the business plan.
My concern there is, that's why my specific thing is to take it off the surplus list. I'm not sure what it means if we pass this as information, what happens to the status of the building. For us to continue this, it has to be taken off the surplus list.
In your mind, okay.
Well, in my mind, I don't know otherwise. If it's not taken off the surplus list,
It risks being,
exactly, and then we're wasting our time.
okay, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next delegation.
Okay, next is David Grant, who's joining us via Zoom with respect to report 7.
Morning, David Grant.
Unmuting. Thank you again. So, very simple topic today on the elimination of a path of appeals. I've never been involved in these sort of things, but I imagine that someone who has a significant monetary stake in a matter might see the appeal as an essential part of city governance. And I could ask rhetorically, and hopefully with respect, do those making the decisions for the city have fragile egos? Can the city convince?
Mr. Grant, my
Yes?
role in this forum is chair and
Okay.
and to personalize your arguments is just not
Okay, can I withdraw that statement?
yeah, and then
I'd like to withdraw that statement.
yeah.
Okay, can the city convince the province that the city decisions are nearly never wrong? Why else would we strive to eliminate an appeal mechanism? Without getting into specific cases, it seems very wrong to eliminate a whole path of appeal. When persons can face harm by city decisions, financial harm and other, appeal mechanisms should be independent of those making initial decisions for the city. In general, we have that system in Canada and in Winnipeg. These appeal systems may be costly, but to eliminate them is to create an upwelling of feelings of injustice across the city. It wasn't explained well in the preamble to this that eliminating this appeal mechanism is because we don't have the staff to handle them, etc. That sort of thing was never explained. And the motivation for doing this, again, wasn't made very clear. The result will be, if the decision made by the city is the final decision, that those decisions, the people making those decisions will have increased power. So without getting into anything else controversial, because we mustn't question the people doing this stuff, I would just leave that as a comment, that the existence of and the use of an appeal mechanism is an important part of running the city. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. We'll
Yeah.
move on to the next delegation.
Okay, the final delegation today is Christy Schertzer to be heard with respect to report 1, and Christy's joining us in person today.
Are we sitting here, standing here? What do I?
Yeah, you sit down and you join us, and do you have a presentation? You
I
don't need
do,
one?
but I didn't give it in time.
Okay,
So, yeah,
you can speak to it then.
alrighty. So, yeah, thanks so much for having me today. And thank you, Councillor Wyatt, for your work. And I see Councillor Schreier too, who I've worked with before. I'm presenting to you as the Executive Director of Manitoba's Farmers Market Association. So we've been around since 2007. We represent over 40 farmers markets across the province, including the well-established Winnipeg farmers markets. And on top of that, we also represent small farms across Manitoba. So we have about 130 small farm members as well. And I would say that we are the people who have the knowledge about farmers markets in Manitoba. And so I think when we saw this study, we were quite surprised because we hadn't been consulted at all. And we've been here nearly 20 years. I've been in my position over 10 years working with farmers markets. And I think when we looked at this study and thought about the year-round farmers market, I was instrumental in and part of making the year-round farmers market at St. Norbert. We have one there. We also have one in Brandon, Manitoba. We also have one in downtown Winnipeg. So that meets bi-weekly in the winter. So I think I wanted to say a few things. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are. So we are a farmers market organization as well as a small farm organization. We work with all levels of government. We work with the federal government. I sit on the executive for the Canadian Farmers Market Association, a federal not-for-profit supporting farmers markets across Canada. And we speak at that federal level with Minister McCauley. I work closely with our provincial Minister of Agriculture here in Manitoba. And we also work with different municipal governments as well, supporting our farmers markets. We have a number of programs that we run. And the biggest one we run is a multi-sectoral, it's called Manitoba Community Food Currency Program. It's over $1 million food security program here in Manitoba, which provides currently 29 community organizations like women's centers, food centers, food banks, an alternative currency, vouchers that people who are participants in those programs and those centers can go to their local farmers market and use that like cash to buy first choice farm food. So these are not food that's left over. They're going and they're deciding which farm products they want to buy, eggs, meat, vegetables. So this program's highly successful in its 5th year here in Manitoba, and we are working with over 800 households. Over 1,000 people are impacted by this program, and half those households are in the city of Winnipeg right now. Other programs we run, we do have a new vendor program that helps new farm and food small businesses attend farmers markets, and it's targeted towards BIPOC farmers and new food businesses who have increased barriers to enter the farmers market. So we're really working with a lot of people. We're working with a lot of farm organizations. We're working with a lot of governments. We're working with farmers, and we're working with farmers markets. And I think an important part that was missing in the report, and an important thing, is that having a building does not make a farmer's market. We can tell you 100%, it's absolutely the last thing you need for a farmer's market. Now, we need infrastructure for farmers markets. We're the only province without permanent infrastructure in Canada for farmers markets. So we need that, but you bring that infrastructure once you have a very viable farmers market. So that would be looking at the St. Norbert Farmers Market, which still does not really have a permanent structure. That's a 4-season tent that is minimally heated in the winter so people can be there. The reason a building doesn't make a farmer's market is that farmers markets are made up of farmers. So we have other vendors, but it's not a farmer's market unless you have farmers there, and people won't come unless there are farmers at a farmer's market. We see so many markets in Winnipeg. We used to have a West Kildonan farmer's market. We had 3 West End farmer's markets. The River Heights farmer's market is struggling right now. They had to close down during COVID because the community center was closed. the Seven Oaks Farmers Market up there at the Wellness Institute is struggling this year too, because there was a push of people to shop at farmers markets during COVID, but that did not carry on. We still have lots of people, but we actually need more people buying local food, way more than we need a new building to make a farmers market, because farmers cannot be at a market every day of the week. And the number one thing we're hearing this year is that farmers markets don't have enough farmers right now. I get calls every week that farmers markets are looking for farmers. Pine Ridge Hollow has no farmer currently at their farmers market. That is a farmers market that is very established and very popular. River Heights is having a hard time getting farmers. Seven Oaks at Wellness, they can't keep their farmer there. So having a building and expecting farmers to be there is just cannot happen, because you need farmers to make a farmers market. We do see the vital role that farmers markets play in food security, municipally, provincially, across Canada. But we need more farmers on the land to make more farmers to be available at farmers markets. And that's where most of the work we do as an organization is working with the provincial government and the federal government to make better farm policy so that farmers can get land, get into farming, be supported, and have viable businesses. So when we look at this report, what we're really seeing is that if the city wants to invest, especially in farmers markets, there's so many fantastic ways to invest in farmers markets that are not just using a big building and expecting farmers to fill it and to have people be there, because that's just not how it's going to happen. And you're going to pull farmers from other farmers markets, get them to be there, and unless it's a chicken and an egg, and I hate to use the farming analogy, but if you don't have farmers, people won't come, and farmers won't come if people aren't there. It's a very delicate balance. You have to have people to have the farmers stay, and it's hard for farmers to come. We see markets start up every year and they fold every year, because when they're looking at their business plan, they're looking at a business plan. They're not looking at, does the community need this? Like, is the Transcona Farmers Market outgrowing itself so much with farmers and running enough weeks a year that it can actually, so am I too far?
No,
Okay.
it is just that before us today is a concept of a plan built around I'll turn to the committee, because I think it's a welcome conversation. It's just not so much in line with I guess it's in line with a feasibility study. But the background of what's before us today is to receive a report as information. The reason for the report was the feasibility of retaining Roland Michener Arena as a year-round farmers market. I guess you're arguing, and I apologize, and you'll still have the time. I guess you're arguing there is insufficiency in the capacity, and so we don't need another. And so I'll let you go on, because I do think it's germane to what we're talking about today. So I apologize for interrupting. I apologize for interrupting. I'm just working out something out loud. Go ahead.
No, and I'll be more focused. I'm sorry. I
No,
talked forever.
You're fine.
So with respect to the arena and say this price tag of developing it into a farmers market, I'd say, yes, we definitely want more farmers markets. As a farmers market organization, of course we want that, but it has to be done in the right way. And what we would say is we would welcome working with people who want to talk about farmers markets and developing farmers markets, because we really feel like we're the ones who understand. We have the connections with the farmers who are at the farmers markets. I would say you have to consult with people like us, consult with farmers, because if you don't get farmers, you're not going to have a farmers market. Do a really good audit on whether the community can do that. But when we look at that money, the last thing I'll just say is that there are so many ways to support farmers markets in Winnipeg rather than dumping money into a new thing. Farmers markets need infrastructure. We need more marketing to already let people know that the farmers markets that we have here already are here. Transit passes would be fantastic. We give out transit passes to people who are part of our food security program. Better access to food, handler training, but these are all ways I think that the city could really support farmers markets without pouring money in. So I'd say with this feasibility study, I can't see with my more than decade experience, this being a success in Transcona with all the markets I've worked with. So yeah, that's what we want to say. We welcome the opportunity to present at the Food Council. It's been a number of years since we've been there, and to work with people who may be interested in this further.
Thank you very much. You have more time, obviously. But I think Councillor Duncan has a question for you.
Thank you for coming to speak in delegation. That was quite a twist there on how it started and how it ended. So lots of good information there. How you did end though about commenting about location being Transcona. Can you expand upon what is or is not a good location for a farmer's market, especially given the restrictions the community currently has to properly operate the existing ones?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say there's like, look, there's obviously bad locations probably. I'm saying Transcona would be fantastic, but like when you're building anything, you want to see that there's the community demand. So when people come to us, we have a list of things that they look through when they're thinking of developing a farmer's market. First is the community, is there the demand? Because if you don't get people, if you're not getting thousands of people through the farmer's market, like that little tiny Wolseley farmer's market can see 2,000 people go through it in 3 hours. 1,000 to 2,000 people. Now, if you're not getting those people, you're not going to keep the farmers. So you want to make sure that the community, that there is that. So there is a farmer's market in Transcona already. Is it kind of at capacity where you're seeing that it could handle a bigger farmer's market? So I'd say that's what, with anything you'd like, if you're building a new arena, you'd want to make sure that there was enough people who would be using that space. So it would be the same thing with a farmer's market. There's a very successful one in West Broadway. So I think that a lot of neighborhoods, like it would be wonderful to see one in every neighborhood, but we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we need people to actually be shopping at them to make them successful.
Councillor Duncan has another question, and then we'll move to Councillor Lard, and then we can go back to Councillor Duncan if you'd like. Still you.
Yep. So the piece around actually having farmers to sell products at these markets, so it's getting worse.
Yeah, like it's really like a farmer's income is a fine line. New entrants to farming, it's challenging for people to make a living farming. Access to land, it's really challenging. There's no business risk management programs for smaller farmers. And farmers can only go to 1 to 2 markets generally, a vegetable
So
farmer.
we don't see any farmers 7 days a week at a market.
Oh no, because then they can't farm.
Right.
Yeah, they don't have enough. Like you'll see like a meat farmer, you might see at more markets because they have a frozen shelf stable product. But for a vegetable farmer, even our biggest farms, you won't see it more than 2 markets a week. So there's 7 days is completely unheard of. So when they brought up St. Jacobs, that's a reseller's market. They're going and buying the food from the food terminal. They're not growing the food at St. Jacobs. So it depends when we think of a farmer's market, we think of the farmer at the market. So not a reselling situation.
Okay. Councillor Lard.
Yes, I'm Chair, through you to the delegates. I'm wondering about the idea of induced demand, and I'm also thinking about the idea of how sometimes if you have, say, more restaurants on a block, restaurateurs may see that as a threat, but all of a sudden there's more activity, therefore more demand, and it actually becomes a destination. And I'm thinking about that kind of logic in terms of adding capacity. I hear that there may not be, enough supply this time, but I'm wondering about the question of what if there were more facilities? Could that spur new entrants in the market, for example, somebody closer to Transcona, for example?
Yeah, that's like definitely interesting. Like we would love to see a point where there's a farmer's market in every neighborhood. I think what we always see as it goes to the culture of people shopping at farmers markets is the place to buy their weekly food. And because just a destination isn't going to get enough people to a farmer's market to make them keep coming back and getting their weekly eggs or anything. So I'd say that 2 parts to that question would be that, yes, we definitely want more, but we don't have enough people. What we saw with a lot of those little proliferation of little markets, especially about 8 years ago in all the little neighborhoods, none of those were able to be viable. So I think that when we've looked at numbers, we did an economic impact study 2 years ago where we looked at the provincial impact and also numbers at all the markets. And we would have to see, I think, some of those numbers going up to then be able to accommodate another, especially a large market that would be a large year-round market. The building would be sitting at, it would be impossible to have it open 7 days a week with farmers.
So, I'm gonna speak here. I was just speaking to my mother yesterday, and my mother was considering a drive out of town just to buy carrots. And I'm wondering about the difference between, I guess, a bustling market and a location where there just happens to be a few things for sale, and perhaps people buy them because they're there. It's like they didn't plan to, but they saw on their way to work or something that there was a facility available. Would we not lose some of those opportunities? I'm also thinking about the 15-minute city and how we want to have a city where people can get places quickly, either walking, biking, by bus, or driving. So I guess I'm wondering about that as well.
Yeah, and that's like definitely, I spoke at the International Public Markets Conference last year, and we looked a lot at that in different countries around the world where markets are so much more accessible within that time. I would say that for those types of things to be successful, you want to start with something pretty small. Like when you say there might be a couple of people, someone comes by, then you start with something small that might have a few vendors, maybe that have meat, eggs, vegetables. They're there on a regular basis in Transcona, and that builds. Like that's how the Wolseley market is built, from just one farmer who delivered his weekly box to twice weekly to now there are about 30 vendors at that market on average, and now it's built into a viable market. So I think it's starting with their building up clientele and then building it, but just providing it, we've seen doesn't work because you're just not going to get the farmers there either until you have the people there. They just can't take time away from the farm unless they're making a certain amount of money per hour at a farmer's market.
Okay, if that's enough questions, I think thank you, Madam Chair, and to the committee.
Thank you very much. Anything further? Thanks for taking the time out. Thanks for writing the committee. And I do appreciate you coming down to City Hall today and the discussion on the health of the farmers markets in Manitoba.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move from delegations to reports. We have before us a few extensions of time that I think we can do a bit of an omnibus motion on to clear the decks here a bit. If you're willing to move the extension of time for items number 5, 6,
If I could get
15 and 16.
So moved. Unless Councillor Duncan.
No, please.
Which ones are we doing? 5, 6, 15, 16?
So moved.
It's just concurrence for the extension of time items.
Yes, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillor Duncan, if you want to also look at those nominations, item number 8 is nominations for the Urban Design Advisory Committee. Some are extensions and some are continuing in the 2-year term.
Yep, I'll concur in the public services recommendation for item number 8.
So moved by Councillor Duncan. All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll go back to, I think, item 1 now. Rolling Michener Arena feasibility study. Do we have a motion here or do you have discussion?
I have a motion.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I'm looking to move this for, sorry. I'm looking to move this as information, receive as information. However, just to get the wording correct, that it will stay as surplus land. Because we need it on the city's radar here to continue to explore this, I guess, just clarification.
Okay, to the public service. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Yes, so I can confirm that with discussions with EPD Real Estate, there's no intention to proceed market or sell this land at this point, but we're also open to rescinding it from the surplus list as well. So whatever the will of the committee is, but we're certainly waiting for this process to play out.
Okay, so just to leave it on the list as is and receive as information, is that possible?
Well, I heard intention, like what if a buyer comes up to the city of Winnipeg and says, I want it now?
Maybe I'll get to Gord Chapel, our head of real estate, to join us as well.
Yeah, we're not actively marketing this land and don't really have any intention to until this process goes out. So whether you want to rescind and we can come back with another declaration if nothing comes of this, or it just sits there and we just take the instructions from the committee that don't proceed any further until additional direction.
Madam Chair,
I would be interested in a both and, presumably if somebody wanted to buy, if it would come through this committee and you'd bring it to our attention.
Presumably the price would warrant approval through this committee, that we wouldn't have administrative
I think
approval.
committee would be open-minded to, both and scenarios.
I heard presumably, those types of words make me uncomfortable. I think there's a reason why presumably was in that statement.
Well, I think his intent was that if there was a buyer and, and he would bring it to our attention as we have in other times.
Well, we haven't appraised the property recently, so I can't tell you what the value is. I assume, and sorry that I can't be more definitive.
No, it's
That
okay.
it'll come this way. If you want absolute,
That's what I'm thinking.
yeah, if you want absolute certainty,
Yeah.
then you rescind the declaration and we can deal with that later. I think I've already.
Take it off surplus for the short term until this plays out.
It's no significant work for us. Not a significant amount to come back and do it again.
And then we lose the presumably part.
I mean, I like making members of council as happy as possible, but I don't think it's necessary given we will be the first ones to know if it is at all at risk. So I don't see it necessary. I know that it is in line with where Councillor Schreiber was thinking,
I have one question,
because we will still see it. And if you feel so protective, you can continue to feel protective because we'll be the first one to see it. Councillor Dobson. and Councillor-
One question. So if a potential buyer came forward, we would still have the option to choose to perhaps use it as a farmer's market versus selling it. There would be no implications there?
Assuming that, yeah, the approval is through this committee, then ultimately you can make that decision of what you choose.
Okay, so then taking it off surplus, really, if the committee is okay with the farmer's market, then taking it off surplus list would not necessarily be,
Wouldn't preclude that option.
okay, no.
Okay, Madam Chair. Okay, I'm hearing the words and I'm assuming that, I'm hearing presumably, I presume there's a threshold in which
Correct.
the committee would not have jurisdiction. So as a compromise sort of motion, can we just make it mandate that this particular property, regardless of its appraised value, come to this committee for consideration? If there is an offer to buy?
Yes, and that is what's being said. The
I don't
word
think so.
presumably literally means to insert or convey, and that is what he's conveying. It will be back here.
So Madam Chair, may I go for another round then?
Oh, yes. of course.
Because I believe that I may be correct in this. So is there any scenario in which this committee may not be apprised of a sale of this property, given that we don't know what it's worth? And if it doesn't meet a certain threshold, would there be the administrative authorities to go ahead without coming to this committee?
There could be, and
There we go.
if I may suggest, if you want to receive as information, but also direct the public service not to market the property for the next year, and then it's still surplus and.
Oh,
I believe Councilor Duncan wants to
Just
move that.
yeah, we can move on that. I just want to make a point though. This, like as surplus land, it would be circulating to the local area council, would it not?
Yeah, we would have to issue another circulation.
Right, okay. I think there's enough safeguards here that Councillor Wyde's made an investment from his LDR. He's, to my understanding, okay with keeping it on the surplus land list, but I mean,
I guess my question is, why wouldn't we do it? Why not just do it?
I
Like,
think
if we're all in agreement that it should come to committee, then are we not?
I think that So it's a question of, do you want more of a comfort than directing the public service not to market the land? And so I think Councillor Duncan is prepared to move to receive his information and add, that sentence. Is that enough comfort for you?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh,
That takes care of it.
thumbs up. Great. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I don't need a timeline on there if it just comes to committee.
Yeah.
Receives information, and then the subject property comes to SPC on P and D. Yes,
Slight change.
sorry, okay,
But that's
we're overcomplicating
the
this.
same.
I'm comfortable with moving, receive it as information and keeping it on surplus land list period. If that's not the appetite of the committee, that's fine. But
The committee wants one more sentence about the direction of the public service not to market it.
for when,
Well, wait. Somebody could make an offer without it being marketed. And if it doesn't meet the thresholds, then it will not come to this committee's attention.
If the wording is that the property is not marketed, we will not accept any offers whatsoever. If you would like even more certainty, we could say this, the public service accept no offers.
There you go.
Subject property for the
Okay.
next 365 days.
I just know that words matter.
That a friendly amendment, Councillor Duncan, to the motion? Or do you want another mover?
yeah, I'll withdraw my motion. I'm not interested in a timeline on it, because if somebody comes forward and says, hey, we're willing to give you X amount of dollars for this building, I think that we should be open to considering that.
No, I think so too. So I think we should
Okay.
ask the public service to
So I'll withdraw my motion, Madam Chair.
just bring anything that has to do with this property to this committee for consideration.
That was Councillor Duncan's original motion then.
I don't believe so, because the public service has confirmed through my questioning that there may or may not be an automatic consideration by this committee, depending on the appraised value of the land. There could be administrative approvals that would not require the coming back here. So
Councillor Duncan's original motion was to receive this information.
Yes.
And then bring any matter pertaining to rural and missioner back to the committee. Do you have a different motion because Councillor
no,
Duncan?
I'll support that. I didn't think that was the motion, was
That
it?
was
Councillor
the
Duncan?
original motion. So we'll go back to his original motion then, if you're good, and if you're still willing to throw it. That was his original motion. It was just that added sentence.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, so I support that.
Okay, so I will, my motion back on the table, receive his information. We'll add the wording of that the property will come to policy committee on the property and development. What do you want to say there?
In any case,
Sale approval, yeah, it comes back to SBC. That's either completely in alignment with policy or trumps any administrative authority we have.
Okay.
well, that's perfect.
Thank you.
We moved that by consensus, I think, but just for the record, all those in favor?
I
Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, team. Building bylaw amendments to address new building code adoption. Mr. Habitat. It's a Boris.
We just didn't understand.
Councilors,
I'm gonna review the tape.
we have, councilors, we have an amending motion here, with respect to, this item. I'm just being circulated. You've seen it. Yeah, it's from you. All right. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair. So you have in front of you the report, but also the amendment, that we, I think the city clerk has also written it up and has it available. If I can just go over that amendment to start with, if that's okay. And this is just to clarify, we had met with legal services and they had some concerns with the language that was originally put in the recommendation. So they suggested this revised wording to address clarity and make sure that it was clear as to the bylaw amendments. So first one is adding regulations in respect to private pools. So we back up just a little bit. In 2024, January 1st, building codes were adopted. And as a result of that, a number of localized provincial amendments were dropped. One of those was with respect to private pool protection. So, and then item B, remove the requirement for an occupancy permit in respect of a change in tenant. This is something that we have been applying for the last year. This is fundamentally just a bylaw amendment to clean up what we've been doing as a business practice. And then C, deleting regulations in respect of sump pumps, sump pits, discharge pipe systems, and floor drains. There was a redundancy in that the water and waste bylaw currently does address these, so there's no need to have them additionally in the Winnipeg building bylaw. So those are the amendments, if that's something that you can consider.
Any questions, councillors? What, you have a part adding regs in respect to private pools. The draft bylaw with respect to pools has subsection 2.1, right? 2.2, 2.3, is this it? Or is it some other conception of the work? So it says, so pertaining to pools, there is pertaining to pools, it says a building permit is not required for the erection of seasonal pools. Despite subsection 2.2, the designated employee is authorized to determine that a pool is not a seasonal pool. And where the designated employee has so determined, the designated employee is authorized to issue an order requiring an owner to obtain a building permit. I guess, you know, it says a seasonal pool means a private pool that is designed and intended to be erected and used seasonally or temporarily only. And that is usually assembled or moved. So like the plastic pools. Or not above ground pools that require specialized equipment and heavy machinery. So it's, you know, a little better than a kiddie pool or a Canadian Tire blow up pool that is smaller than a hot tub, for instance. So you're saying if it's not a seasonal pool.
Yeah, so we took the opportunity to, when we lost the provincial amendments, and before we presented this amendment into our building bylaw, to clean up what the scope of responsibility was, because currently public health does have oversight on public and semi-public pools. We didn't want to have overlapping regulations. So what legal services had recommended to us is put some definition to what pools we would be having oversight with. So private pool is defined now. Public pool, again, is the ulterior to that. Alternative to that is the actually Public Health Act definition. And then seasonal pool. What we didn't want to do is introduce permitting for seasonal pools, because we recognize this is going to be onerous. Right? People can buy these at Canadian Tire instead, and we're not chasing in permits. But we wanted to capture the responsibility for the owner. So if you notice, the amendment puts the owner's responsibility that they protect those seasonal pools in the same way that they would an in-ground pool, because the risk is essentially the same. So even though we're not asking for permits for seasonal pools, we recognize the risk and have the owner be responsible to ensure that they're doing things like locking gates, covers, etc.
And then is this a change, the structural design on 24.4.2, bear the seal of a professional engineer? Is that a change?
No, that's a carryover from the requirements in the provincial code. And part of that has to do with what the impact is if a structure basically can collapse. It can cause obviously harm to people. So that kind of
provincial code, why do we need to have it?
So in January 1st, 2024, as part of the national code harmonization approach, all of the provinces agreed to reduce their amendments. One of the Manitoba amendments was pools. So we had this element in our Manitoba building code that we enforced. When they went through that harmonization, they removed that. So we in essence didn't have any legislation to basically oversee this requirement. So we had to put this somewhere. The building bylaw was the most reasonable approach to enter the requirements. We carried over many of the same amendments. It's just the language is now embedded into the bylaw.
But In your mind, then it's not a duplication.
Well, because it's gone from the provincial. It doesn't exist in the provincial code.
So then why do you want to move it to do this?
Well, we need some authority to enforce it. So
Why do you want to enforce it if it's a provincial matter?
it's,
They
sorry,
can enforce it.
it is no longer a provincial matter.
Cool, so why then do you want? If they've deemed it unnecessary, why do you want it?
Well, again, if I look at, drownings in the city of, or sorry, across Canada, 56.3% of all drownings occur in residential and public pools.
Sure,
So,
but this item pertains to its design, and so,
no, it's design, but it's protection. So if you look at 2443, the fencing, the barriers, the self-closing, the gates, the heights, all that stuff. Yeah, the structural design is a requirement based out of the essence of it being a structure.
Yeah.
So we have an obligation to kind of, even if we didn't include that in this, so if you're saying take out 2442 specifically,
so I'm saying, you know, the Manitoba government is the regulator and overseer of engineers. They have taken it out of their code. Why do we suddenly have to move into that space if they deemed it not necessary? The enclosures I get in from an
Gotcha.
enforcement perspective, but they are the holders of the seal. Professional engineers are. And if they deemed the structural part, I mean, how are you going to determine if it's, you know, structurally sound? So that I see is different. The enclosures, different matter, but 24.42, the structural design for a private pool that is in-ground swimming pool must bear the seal of a professional engineer, competent and qualified in the structural designing of an in-ground swimming pool. So you want a stamped seal suddenly on a sector
yeah, and
code.
in my understanding, so just if I kind of parse the structural aspect of it, the current, pre-January 1st, 2024, this requirement was in the Manitoba Building Code, and it was to address the private pools. So Part 9 buildings that had private pools would not have normally required the engineer to establish, you know, kind of some sort of oversight of that. If that's pulled out, then yeah, you could have potentially someone building an in-ground pool and wouldn't require a structural engineer. Is that what the council is looking to do?
Okay. On. And then. Where is the? You don't have further amendments pertaining to the other two items on sump pumps?
So-
We just have pools done so far?
No, we have all of them in there, but C is deleting the regulations. So in essence,
Okay.
that
you're
section's
removing
been
it.
removed completely. And it's, again, it's not that it's,
Good red tape,
yeah, we just want reduce oversight, multiple layers of oversight. So,
same thing with sump pumps.
yeah,
So it's not there, it's just deleting those components.
yeah, it exists in the water waste bylaw.
Do we need to point to those? As a function of the.
I think it's under, and I would just have to double check here. Section 23 amended, section 23 is amended with 23.1 by replacing and all applicable bylaws. So I think the leading sections 23.12 to 23.51 inclusively is the ones that refer to the removal of the sump pump, sump pit, discharge pipe systems and floor drains.
Okay. Have that for removing the requirement for occupancy permit and respective change of tenant.
Yes, and of course it's gonna.
And in one sense, you're removing the requirement. And then you have deleting regs. So,
Yeah, so the removing portion was the sentence F, which is, if you look just above that section, subsection 15.121 is amending by deleting clause F, sorry, deleting, deleting.
okay, do we have a mover?
I'll move it.
So moved by Councilor Lard, all those in favor?
Right.
Okay, that was carried unanimously. Thanks for your work on that. Appreciate it. Honorary street naming designated Israeli Bridge is Honorary Buckman Turner Overdrive.
I guess any objections from committee?
No, do we have a mover?
I'll move it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
There we go, we just took care of business. Ha,
Uh,
ha. Proposed lease agreement between Kinder World Daycare and the city of Winnipeg located adjacent to 1501 Gateway Road. Do we have a mover?
I'll move it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously by committee. Extension of times, we've done concurrence of prioritized list of issues with recent legislative changes to the City of Winnipeg Charter Act. Councilors, we have both a motion. It is a motion that I am going to speak to, but I don't suggest we do. We have a briefing. Mr. Veach.
Both Jameses.
Yeah, Mr. Platt, Hazel Boris, how about we do an introduction?
All right, we're joined by Senior Planner James Platt, who worked on this report. And James Platt is also on a working committee with the province on these items. So I will hand it over to James Platt for the introduction.
Okay, so Bill 37, Provincial Bill 37 and Provincial Bill 34 came into effect October 2021 and September 23 respectively. Both pieces of legislation made alterations to the charter, including the manner in which development applications are processed and a number of other smaller items. Both sections of legislations or pieces of legislation require the province to undertake a comprehensive review by October 29th, 2024, and also table a report in the legislature by 2025. Province's consultant has contacted the Public Service to get feedback on the legislation. The Public Service has prepared a prioritized list of issues to be raised in those discussions with the province's consultant. This list is provided in Appendix A. And the Public Service is looking for concurrence from council prior to engaging with the province's consultant.
With respect to Bill 37, that piece of planning legislation really took place over the course of many years, in fact, and many ministers in the previous government committee. The city had, and at the time as a councillor, I was engaged, even last election on elements of the legislative changes. Worked with Assembly of Manitoba, the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, on bills and issues of the bill. There is no question there are a few issues that created situations that we're trying to work through to this day in terms of development policy. I've been really outspoken, for instance, on my dissatisfaction with the municipal board, on my dissatisfaction with the consultations, including consultations that were during the municipal election on this bill. What I am, I view it as a piece of legislation that that thought very little of the charter and the legislation in terms of economic development and a policy framework where we understand economic development and we understand property and development as a department that really has a role to play on economic development that resulted in massive administrative changes to timelines that we are largely adhering to, and we see that in reports from the Public Service. even though at the same time, our committee has been focused on reducing red tape and changing property and development policy in 3 phases, major phases, 2 of which we're rounding on this in this fall at council, and more. So to get housing units out. These timelines, expedited timelines, we're supporting in many different ways, with or without this bill. I don't like the municipal board as a non-democratic structure, a structure to which is blocking housing, in particular in your ward, Councillor Duncan. What we could do is a motion to consider some of the issues. What I'd like to do, though, is really leave, have a bit of a discussion today, but really leave that discussion to the public service as they go forward. In particular, you know, James Platt, Mark Pite, James Veach, but James Platt in the main on the working group with Bill 37. I think we've seen, you know, a change of government. I know we've seen a change of government and a change of tone with respect to municipalities by Premier Canu's government. So with that change of tone now holding the pen, I no longer fear the previous tone in Bill 37 that you can really see, which is, you know, to be under the thumb of the province as a regulator, as opposed to the province being super cognizant of themselves as both a regulator, but also the aspirations of our province and economic development, and getting working on the same team with all municipalities. So there are good things in this legislation. There is good food for thought for municipalities, but there is structures of conflict resolution that I absolutely disagree with, and wish would be eliminated. There are some structures that we have, like council prorogue, that cause delays during construction season, that I think as a council, we have some tools to manage. There's election blackouts periods for sure. There's statutory holidays, but I think there's manners to manage this at council, and to have this discussion in and amongst ourselves, as we've been doing as a committee that has quite a very intensive policy focus that we're trying to drive through council this term, aligned, I think, and there's a very strong alignment, I think, with the public service who's, you know, trying to drive that change too, and put excellent options before council to expedite items, just like we saw today with Mr. Klassen, who's gone. So, and the elimination of and deleting regulations, mindful of red tape reduction and duplication and more. So this, I don't believe a motion is necessary, but I did want to write a bit of a Coles notes with the help of the mayor's office, in particular, Brian Kelsey, to consider some of the issues today, but I'll open up the discussion that way. I forgot to mention the 2 things that are in the report. Number 1, you know, this is really just a discussion we're having with policy reviewers based on legislative requirements to review a piece of legislation. So I don't think this is, while they have a timeline to fulfill their review, the government has over a year to consider then the review on this piece of legislation. And concurrently, we will continue to have conversations. I certainly have had conversations with cabinet members with respect to this piece of legislation. I will continue to, and similarly, the department has occasion to be on working groups with the department. So this certainly isn't the only opportunity to talk about the planning piece of legislation or charter with the provincial government. Councillor Duncan.
So thank you. in the amending motion for the therefore be it resolved piece speaks to the council parole periods, just so we're clear. We're talking about the summer period following our last council meeting in July. And this would open that up to being able to have the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development sit for additional meetings or scheduled meetings, or how would that?
So that's why I put it as food for thought for the committee. Currently, the piece of legislation doesn't consider standard times to which council, which is, it doesn't consider things like our council prorogue or like election blackout periods where we're not sitting. And so, that the public service is fully aware of. And so it is, I wouldn't want us to direct the public service to do anything more than, comment on realities, with respect to timing. But as you know, Councillor Duncan, I did contemplate what the work back schedule would look like if there were hearing bodies during the prorogue period, because our prorogue period is designated by council. Council can designate hearing bodies. So we could theoretically work through August providing a hearing body if we did some homework. So while it irritated me that Bill 37 and any legislation came forward without really knowing things like, elections occur. For instance, one of my frustrations was that I had a deputy wanting to consult with me on this legislation during an election period. Now, I'm still a counselor, so I can, but that's a particular period to which I found it slightly ignorant of municipalities when you go consult on, a major piece of enabling a legislation for municipalities in a time of flux. And while there was a lot of stability in the city of Winnipeg's councillors, that wasn't the case in the Met region, for instance, where there was a wholesale change. So you had a provincial government consulting with councillors that actually never returned to their council. They were voted out. So I put it as food for thought for you. I don't want perception that council can't change and designate a hearing body during a prorogue period, right? We can, in fact, we're going to be looking at that with the Housing Accelerator Fund, where we're designating council as the hearing body. And Andrew Poitras is up next, and Carlos to talk to us about that. So these are just, items basically for committee to, look. It's not a motion I want to do today, but it is motion elements in a draft that I think are worth talking about as we move forward in considering the planning legislation and our charter. What we can do as council, I think, is always our first step before, and then what we want out of a provincial government. And with respect to this legislation, my comments in the main have been, we want a better partner in development with some shared goals, in particular, the health and welfare of the province, to which we're responsible for the majority of the population and the majority of dollars going to the province in Canada. Go ahead.
Thank you for those words, Madam Chair. And which reminds me of the one thing that's not in this report is our performance standards that will increase as of March of next year. And so, like, for instance, notification of a complete application goes from currently 5 days down to 2 days. And decisions on applications go generally from 25 days right now down to 10 or 15 days. And then inspections goes from 6 days for residential down to 2 days and 4 days for commercial down to 2 days. So the report before you at the moment does not address our shortage of 77 full-time employees. That was reduced, of course, in the upcoming budget, 4-year budgets by 10, 10, 10, and 8 over the next 4 years. But we still have that deficit of staff that would be able to hit those new service level agreement numbers, those performance targets as of this coming March. The report before you does not ask the province to increase, to make any changes to those, but we do still have that staffing shortage as a risk.
So, many risks, one of the risks we heard early on around, just the sheer amount of time that staff had to be at the municipal board and the amount of resources we lose. There are innumerable, risks and changes of processes. Some I agree with in spirit, some I don't, but, it's a review period, pretty basic policy process for any piece of legislation is to review it. We do it all the time too. So, this report is just the public service saying what they're going to be talking about. And I suggest we move it.
Could I have a word, please?
Yes.
Item number, the amendments, item number 5A2, it says delete the words council progs, election blackouts or otherwise. And replace with council progs during election years. Okay, so does that mean that during the period of August when we're on prog, we're off? Are we gonna be at that point required to attend meetings?
No. So first of all, again, don't look at it as a motion, Councillor Dobson, because I don't intend to move it today unless you're interested, but I don't want to. It's just look at it more as a note on food for thought. But in that case, in this particular case, it is specific to council prorogues during election years. So as you're aware, we prorogue for the summer.
Yes.
As well as during elections, we also have a prorogue period between not quite when the writ is dropped, but for about a month while we're in campaign period. I think it's a period of 3 weeks in earnest, right? Before the October. So that is, a discussion point. Given the legislation and given what the public service is looking at to raise with the reviewers of the legislation. Perhaps that's okay. Anything else on this?
Are you looking for a mover on the public service recommendation?
Yes, Councillor Lark.
I'll do that.
Okay,
Just to clarify, that's just the public service recommendation, no amendments?
that's great. Recommendations essentially 1 and 2. Right. All those in favor?
All right.
Carried unanimously. Densification proposals adjacent to unimproved lands. We heard from Councillor. Oh, sorry, development procedure bylaw amendments. My apologies. So this is the council enact a bylaw to amend the development procedures bylaw. to designate council as a hearing body for certain zoning bylaw amendments arising from the Housing Accelerator Fund, to require that applications that are the same or substantially similar to development applications that was rejected in the previous year be subject to public hearing at community committees, and then to delete pre-application process for development applications, to clarify city-initiated development applications can be made for various matters, such as text amendments to the zoning bylaws, to authorize the director to set submission requirements for city-initiated development applications that are different from the submission requirements, and that the proper officers do all things. This stems from the November 23rd council motion on Housing Accelerator Fund application, and the May council direction to the public service to prepare amendments on the development procedures bylaw. I want to thank the public service for this work. We do have an amending motion on item 9 to clarify that where council is designated as the hearing body in respect to public hearing or combined hearing, that council shall follow all established practices and procedures followed by every other hearing body, including community committees, standing policy committees, and executive policy committee. We typically have those committees as the hearing body. In this case, you'll recall council directed us to have council as the hearing body. And so that process looks a little different with a speaker versus just 4 councilors in the chair, or because council has different pitter patters of established practices. So this considers some guidance, I think, for the speaker. On when and where council is designated as the hearing body. So if you'd like to hear a summary from administration.
Yes.
Unless you have a mover, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and everything you said is accurate. This is why we're bringing this forward, development procedure bylaw amendments. It was based on the November 2023 council motion that is designating council as the hearing body for all the upcoming zoning bylaw amendments related to the Housing Accelerator Fund. So that was the key change here. And then there's a couple other changes in terms of we're just clarifying that now the pre-application process has been deleted. That was within development procedures, and that was another council motion. A third change here to recognize the ability of the city to be the applicant for city-initiated development applications. Again, that's related to HAF and that land enhancement team from the HAF office. And then the fourth change is allowing the director to set different submission requirements for development applications initiated by the city. And again, that's related to some of our HAF projects where we are bringing forward applications to get property shovel ready. And the director can say, okay, this is what you need to provide for that application. And it may be slightly different than what we require on development center applications. So those are the amendments. And and then the amendment came from the clerk's office, and it's a good one to just ensure that the council hearing body follows all the same procedures as our other hearing bodies.
Any questions? Okay, Councillor Duncan.
Just on recommendation B, 1B, sorry. Is this tied into the displeasure that councillors have expressed around rejecting and then almost immediately having the applicant come back with the same thing?
Yes, and that was specifically in terms of variances and conditional uses when they are rejected. There wasn't the avenue to say, you can't just keep reapplying with the same application. So now this clarifies that if it was rejected, then they would have to come back to a public hearing at community committee instead of what we have now is that administrative process for some of those variances and conditional uses. So this gives community committees an opportunity to weigh in.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
How is the determination made that something is the same application or not? Could someone not just change the application slightly and that be a new application?
Yeah, there's language around that. I think the language is substantially similar, so there is, but typically we have a pretty good eye on the application and if it's similar, then we
Okay.
would bring it to community.
And so that's essentially delegate authority to the public service to determine whether or not there's.
Yeah. And we do it often. There's a lot of determination in applications.
And then just on, 1A, has council not been a hearing body for any zoning bylaw amendments in the past?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
We have our city clerk here, Madam Chair, if he could.
Come to the table.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To answer your question, no, I believe this is the first time that council's actually been designated as a hearing body. And then that's, as the chair pointed out, that's why we're bringing forward this amending motion as a clarifier. Just because the council processes are somewhat different than a public hearing process. You have things like needing a mover and a seconder for motions, as an example, right? You have limits on how many motions you can have. Whereas at public hearings, the process is a lot more fluid. There's a lot more opportunity for discussion. So we wanted to ensure that the processes were largely in keeping with established at committees. But to answer your question again directly, is that this the first time, to the best of my knowledge, this is the first time that council is acting as a hearing body.
Imagine the opportunity for filibusters.
Yeah, so I guess now that you say that, Mr. City Clerk, my concern would be that, and there's no turning back, I suppose now, but is there any way to, are we going to be restricting speaking time,
Same processes that are in place at committee would be followed at council.
So Madam Speaker Sharma is going to pick and choose who speaks when? And just like, is there going to be time on the clock or is it just going to be a?
So this is going to be a little bit more complex in the fact that, as an example, at community committee, you would have 3 members of council that would be conducting, that would be part of the hearing body. Now we're going to have 16 people. So it's going to certainly involve a lot more coordination of speakers and of the decision itself.
So prearranged dinner.
Hopefully we'll be done by then.
So Madam Speaker, through you to the
Thank you.
administration. What rules of order will govern, like majority rules? Like,
so the same processes that are in place for community committee, standing committee, and EPC when they're the public hearing. It's the development procedures bylaw, and in part also some certain sections of the procedure bylaw, 5110, for example. But it is the same process. The only difference is that there's going to be a lot more people involved in the process now.
so Madam Speaker, through you to the administration, is there anything stopping someone from filibustering for as many days as they want in terms of numbers of questions, concerns, perhaps stories, that are part of a question that take a lot of time to communicate? I'm thinking of very, very long questions, and I don't know what I'm thinking of is there a mechanism to reel that in?
Sure. So again, the procedure bylaw has a specific section on hearings. And it says that any hearing body, including a committee of council that is required under the charter to hold a bylaw or conduct a public hearing, may establish reasonable time limits for presentations, questions, and objections. So again, so that already exists. So that process already exists. Conceivably, to your point, could somebody speak for an extended period of time at a community committee, standing committee, or EPC at a public hearing? Conceivably, they can, but there are also rules that would allow the chair to limit those speaking times if the chair or the committee feels that adequate time has been provided.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm thinking of if a city councilor wanted to delay, I guess, a bylaw from passing, that city councilor might introduce new information later in the process, which would then, my experience, sometimes there has to be like a reinitiation of the process because new information has been injected into the debate. is there any mechanisms to stop that?
Sure.
If you follow me, if I'm,
the chair is. Yeah. And there is a specific process that's actually set out in place in the development procedures bylaw that, specifies how the hearing takes place. It does specify, that you actually do hear from, can hear from the administration. And then, of course, you have people that are appearing either in support, in opposition. So then the councillors do have, the members of council will have an opportunity to ask questions as they normally do right now. And then again, there might be an opportunity for further discussion before we actually get into the decision-making process at the public hearing.
so I'm thinking of things that could happen.
Sure.
And so, if a city councillor wanted to block a bylaw from being passed, could one not introduce substantive information in the middle of the process that everyone would hear? And then so doing, open up the city of Winnipeg to potential Court of Queen's Bench action for having not conducted a fair hearing?
Hypotheticals, I'm not exactly sure on how that would happen.
So
But
at the point,
just to clarify, you're talking about at the public hearing, but not the bylaw itself.
at the public hearing,
At the public hearing, okay.
because I could, if I go and add some material consideration, all my colleagues hear me.
That can happen at any hearing, Councillor.
Well, I know, but when it's a smaller hearing, there's social dynamics that happen where the hearing actually closes eventually. At council, the dynamics may be very different, and I don't know that there would be the same type of solidarity in terms of keeping to the.
However, the timing and procedures that we have at hearings, not at council, apply. So first you hear from the appellant, then you hear from those in support of the appeal, then you hear from, and have the opportunity to ask questions of the public service. Then you hear for those that, from the applicant, then, those information, you have the opportunity to talk to the public service, and then you have an opportunity to go around again, hear from the rebuttals, ask more questions again, just like we did last 2 days ago, I think. And so this is substantively different because there's 16 members of council that might have questions for the public service. But that pitter patter of the nature of a hearing body, we've done. So we've experienced. I agree with you that, council's a hearing body is now 16 members, but, we do know the procedures of a hearing really well, all of us, including our mayor, because our mayor came from council. So I think that, it's doable. I do think that it's important that we clarify in 1F here that, at first, I also thought this motion might not be necessary, except I think it's good to state that we have specifics related to practices and procedures for public hearings, and that when we all do it together, as we designed in the motion, that we're going to do it in familiar territory aligned with those practices and procedures that we have at the hearing. Councillor Duncan, you want it in.
And I want it again.
And then you want it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I just have a note here about how because this, as we are having this conversation now, and clearly not a public hearing, but like the interactions, as you mentioned earlier, are quite fluid in these types of things. Can you paint a picture of how that's managed? Like, I'm assuming that property development will come with their team. We have a full council room there. How does this all work with managing that all with that?
Are you speaking specifically about the administration speaking to council?
You're right, like
Yeah, so then, again, there is enough room around the table and there are seats behind the council on the east side as well of the chamber where the administration could sit on the floor. They conceivably would present at the podium. Is that the dynamics that you're?
Yeah, I can wrap my head around that. I don't need an answer for that. I guess more so the wording says that council is designated the hearing body. It doesn't say that it's a meeting of council. So would Councillor Rollins be the chair?
So that's a great question, and I think this is how we actually have to wrap our heads around this process. Is that this is not a council meeting in a regular role to consider committee reports.
Yeah.
This is now council being a hearing body.
For a
take the word
property
council out of it. Take
development.
the word council out of it, and just say this is a hearing body. It's a hearing body now composed of 16 members of council, as opposed to 3 at community committee, but the process that's going to be followed is going to be the same. It's going to involve a lot more involvement potentially of the speaker, making sure that individuals
Is it the speaker though? I like the way I read this is a matter of property and development.
So the chair of this committee, the chair of council is the speaker. It's actually in the charter. Yeah, it's actually designated in the charter.
Madam Chair.
I don't know if I mean, sorry, Councillor Rollins, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but the way I read it is that we have said council is hearing this matter.
Correct.
It doesn't say that it's flipping over into a council meeting where
council is a hearing body. It's designating council as a hearing body. So then that's the distinction that you need to make. It's not council acting as its regular role to consider committee reports and bylaws. It's now acting as a hearing body. This is why we actually needed to, well, we didn't need, as the chair pointed out, this amendment that we're seeking is not necessarily required. It's simply as a clarifier to say that now that council is actually acting as a hearing body, just so you know, we're going to be following the same processes that regular hearing bodies follow, because council does follow different processes when it's actually acting in its role, in its normal role.
I think it's actually saving us from doing it in situ where Carlos and Andrew are constantly up supporting council and going, yeah, no, the speaker is correct. Not time for councillors' questions now. In fact, we're still hearing from those, and typically we do speak to those in appealing. With 16 speakers, that could be long. So we'll see how it goes. But
it's going to be fun.
I agree.
It's going to be great.
Councillor Dobson, then Councillor, back to you, Councillor Allard.
Just kind of clarification. So this is kind of like property and development. This committee expanded to 15 members instead of just 4.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Okay, I can understand that.
So, Madam Chair, what's stopping any individual councillor from saying, I want to hear again from Delegate X, and then the whole process starts all over again? Because that happens in our public hearing processes right now.
So again, up to the chair to regulate the meeting in accordance with the rules of procedure. There is that procedure. Conceivably, if that happens, again, dealing with a lot of hypotheticals, the speaker or the chair could rule that no, we've passed that point. You've talked about introducing new information after the fact. That's something that, in my personal experience as clerking meetings, I've seen where, as an example, when people are appearing in rebuttal, that they sometimes will introduce new information, and then the chair will point out, this is new information, this can't be introduced. You're here to speak only in rebuttal at this point.
Yeah.
So the public hearing process is structured in such a way that you can ask questions and can address certain issues in the prescribed time. But conceivably, if somebody tries to provide something that is not in accordance with the established procedure, the chair or the speaker in this case would rule on that and say, no, that is not in accordance with the regular process.
2 more questions, Council or Chairperson. So what if someone challenges the chair?
Same thing, same process that exists right now. If somebody challenges the chair, there would be a vote to see whether or
There would
not
be
the
a
ruling,
vote.
yeah, whether or not the ruling of the chair would be sustained.
Okay, and I guess my final question is, I'm a city councillor. I don't think I've gotten enough information. I refuse to vote on this as a member of the hearing body.
So as a member of the hearing body, you're actually required to vote on the matter.
So make me.
You can't abstain.
So what do you do?
This process is no different than what's been established.
I know,
for-
but the
for many
stakes are
years.
different. So I'm considering some of the things that some of the people might, not impugning some things that people could do in order to break the process.
The charter does not allow abstentions from voting for voting.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully I haven't given anybody too many ideas.
Yeah, I disagree that the stakes are different. I think that this is a really important innovation to for us to consider designating hearing bodies. In this instance, council. So I think that number one is a really great thing to contemplate in of itself. The motion right now is to clarify the procedures and practices that we always use. The only difference is the amount of people that are going to be in this hearing, which is all of us. And then, you know, Councillor Sharma, who has a lot of experience as a speaker, however, doesn't, and a lot of his experience as an appeal body, but doesn't typically do a hearing at council. So that's the only thing that's novel. The motion, you know, could contemplate, you know, limiting like a different practice. I'm supportive of this one because I think it's familiar territory. For instance, we could move 5 minutes versus 10 minutes, given we're in the committee of the whole. But, you know, for now, perhaps there's a mover.
Yeah, and I mean, on that, the chair could make a recommendation, right? The chair of council, and the rules of the
Yeah.
committee can be set at that time,
And
presumably by majority vote.
typically when we see a hearing, sometimes we do say, hey, there's a lot of speakers today. If, you know, if you're about to make the same point, you know, perhaps just say it, but don't explain the same point. And sometimes that does assist everyone in limiting repetition and limiting the 10 minutes each, which can be very, very long in a long hearing. Councillor Duncan.
So to your point there with the time limited, I think there is some validity to having that lesson from the 10 minutes for sure. And I was just asking the senior clerk about, there's also no time limit for us as counselors in a public hearing to speak to, like, share our thoughts. And I'm not trying to feed Councillor Lard's interest in what could be here, but
Hey, I'm just
there's,
anticipating problem.
I mean, there's like,
I mean, I certainly feel like if we talk about our last appeal, I certainly feel that I did curtail some of Councillor Lard's questions and said, you know, I think you're debating right now when, right? I mean,
Yeah, and I happen to be
agreed.
agreeable though. If I hadn't been agreeable, it could have been.
Challenge the chair.
Yeah.
Right? But at the time, we were listening to those in support of the appeal. You started questioning and going down a road of, are you aware? And I said, I think you're entering into debate versus just genuinely asking questions, and I checked in with you. I'm always subject to a challenge from the chair. we would have then, I would have thrown it to a vote had you challenged me. I think you would have lost, but we don't know. And then you would have continued on, right? So that would happen here to Councillor Duncan, over to you. You can.
Yeah, you know what, I would be, having digested some of this, I would be open to adding an amendment that public representation, I believe it is, for this particular hearing be limited to 5 minutes, given that we're gonna have to hear several people, and I think for some of these more lengthy hearings, it's important that council is paying attention and is digesting everything people say. If we're getting into dozens and dozens and dozens of delegates or people.
Want to limit
I'm just thinking that like it's
5 minutes as opposed to 10.
right. I think it's important that people are able to hear as many people and
And you anticipate a lot of people, and so you want us to hear it at 5 minutes and trial it at 5 minutes. That's
Yeah.
what I think Toronto has.
I think,
So,
yeah.
Councillor Lard and Councillor Dobson, you have thoughts?
So we have 5 minute presentation and then 16 councillors and the mayor ask a question. Is there a time limit on the question?
No, so typically, like, there's a lot of style differences, as you know, because you sat on a lot of different appeals. There's a lot of style differences. I don't know. I have the impression that I keep it kind of tight and, prevent a lot of, off into the galaxy policy discussion. I want to keep it germane to the point and, and I think that that's fair that I keep it sort of tight. Others don't. And so and frankly, Councillor Sharma doesn't necessarily, like Speaker Sharma, this is a new road. So I haven't actually participated with Speaker Sharma in a hearing. I don't think. So I have participated with, Deputy Speaker Edie, but I haven't with Speaker Sharma. So, but I know she keeps it tight at council. So, you probably have, so you might have more of a sense of that, but there is style differences amongst chairs. There's no question. I think that that'll depend on the chair, whether they're, doing what I did, 2 days ago to you, right? Or they're letting you go, right? I don't know.
Well, for capping presentation time, but not Q&A time.
Yeah, there's no precedent, like there's no precedent for 5 minutes except but I think it's fine, that's fine. I don't know, in terms of council direction on hearing, I don't know what the emotion would be and I'd be hesitant to do one. I think that's a cultural piece. Carlos wants to get in on that though.
Yes, so then the committee, or in this case, council, again, does have the ability to establish reasonable time limits for presentations, questions, and objections. So then that ability already exists. Conceivably, as I believe Councilor, you may have suggested, that might be something that would be established at the beginning of the meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to do something like that says you can cap it at, 3 minutes, or, the other thing that we do during question period is one preamble. And then you better get to your question. And that's a practice that only Councillor Sharma knows really well. So I like that as a practice, especially in that kind of environment. So, because you shouldn't be debating, I don't think, in a hearing until you debate the motion. Councillor Lard and then Councillor Dobson.
So through you to the public service, I understand the Winnipeg Charter says you have to either vote for or against. Is it possible in the procedure bylaw to address a situation where a council refuses to vote for or against? Because I'm looking at the possibility that somebody tries to break the process.
So we couldn't amend the procedure bylaw to be in contravention of the charter. The charter will always supersede any bylaw.
Okay, well, I know that process is what protects the city from going to Court of Queen's Bench for quasi-judicial. So if we start getting outside of our process, any one of us, then it could certainly, possibly get us into legal problems. So it goes.
Okay, to you, Madam Chair. If I understand this correctly, if we give them 5 minutes and we vote for an extension of time, it can be expanded. Like if we only have a few people that are there to speak and we feel that the topic is good enough, then we could expand it to however many extensions. So the 5 minutes I feel is fine. And as for too many people asking questions, we could probably at the beginning state a time limit for questioning for each individual. Is that correct?
The bylaw already allows the committee to establish.
Okay, so I'm good with it then.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a mover in, I think all three of you, but
I'll move it.
Okay.
We're good.
so Counselor Dobson moves the motion as amended.
With much apprehension, I will support.
Yeah, I mean, I think we gotta just do it. Like the Nike swoosh
Yeah,
compels us
see
to
what happens.
just do it. Okay, yeah, over to you.
And sorry, just to clarify, councillors, that's the motion as amended as it's written on the sheet in front of you? Or
As
Yes.
amended by Counselor Dunn.
Yeah,
with the
the 5 minute.
duration? Okay. And that's that, it also, so it would be to clarify that where council is designated as a hearing body in respect of a public hearing or combined hearing, the council shall follow all established practices and procedures followed by every other hearing body, including community committee, SPC and EPC, with an exception that public representation be limited to 5 minutes.
Can I add another problem to the question list?
So then we'll determine if it's friendly.
No, it's not an
Oh.
amendment I want.
Oh, just another problem.
Just another problem, yeah.
Okay.
So I understand that everything that is in a public hearing is to be made part of that public hearing. What happens, for example, if it's a public service or any city councillor makes, like writes an email to the hearing body that's not on the record in an attempt to break the process? What happens then?
So similar to a hearing and all that.
Well, I've never seen that happen in the context of a hearing, but in the context of a council hearing where somebody is looking to break something.
So you're contemplating a scenario in which a counselor purposely disrupts the regular procedures of the hearing. I mean,
Like emails things to the hearing body that are not like by default added to the public record, which I understand is what should be in terms of the legislation around public hearings. Maybe perhaps my understanding is wrong. Can I email my colleagues
during the public hearing.
during the public hearing, secret communications that the public isn't
In a
seeing?
way, we sometimes do that where we're like, I'm gonna recommend a 5-minute health break after this speaker. So like, that's an example.
No,
of
but
one I
something
probably
material.
sent to you before.
Let's say I want to break your bylaw. I write a private communication and then I bring that to Court of Queen's Bench to say this was not made public in the public hearings.
So, okay, well, I'll let the clerks answer, but like the scenarios are a lot.
I'm thinking of ways to break it
Yeah,
and trying to protect us.
I mean,
But then we engage this code at some point,
And-
right? Like you're thinking of intentionally sidelining a hearing and
Well,
we have
in-
lots of stuff
intention-
that we might engage then.
I'm trying to protect us from possible court action.
Well, I think we're good. Like,
yeah,
that's not your role, you know?
Well, our rule is,
Yeah, you don't have to,
Okay.
there's nothing.
I'm good. I just want to put that, I want to put that one on
go
too.
for the vote here.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
As amended, that was passed unanimously. We'll move on to, I think the densification proposal is adjacent to unimproved lands. Do we have a mover?
So moved.
That was carried, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Citywide residential infill strategy. Do we have, a mover to,
Can I ask you?
yeah, we have questions? Go ahead, Councilor Duncan.
For the public service, can we address Councilor Oraco's question around other form of housing other than the
5 points.
yeah, 4 units, 4 stories, whatever?
Madam Chair, through you. We will definitely be addressing how the November 23rd, 2023 council motion directing the public service to enable 4 dwelling units on every residentially zoned lot. Because part of that motion also requires that we establish parameters under which that is adopted. And certainly as part of the consultation process that we are undergoing now with stakeholders, in which we will be bringing forward for council consideration in the new year, we will definitely be addressing those concerns through that process.
I regret not asking Councilor Orlico this, but was the concern that the triplexes and duplexes are not being addressed at all? And then they default to as of right as well? Was that the concern?
Madam Chair, through you, my understanding of what Councilor Orlico said today was that bucket 3.2, which is the 4 dwelling units per residentially zoned lot and the 4 stories within 800 meters of frequent transit corridors. My understanding when the notes I took when he was speaking said that those should definitely include duplexes and triplexes and not just fourplexes. However, one other city councilor did not agree with him in previous discussions. So that will be something that we work through as part of this design process that we have already started and that we will continue and present you some solutions in January. Once the current bucket 3.1, which is the malls and corridors zoning upgrade is complete. Yeah.
Okay. Add a question to our offline conversation about this. I'll follow up. I won't take up any of the committee's time. Thank you.
So before us is a resolution to have the Standing Policy Committee on P&D direct the public service to report back within 90 days on a work plan for a citywide residential infill strategy. I've been really clear at council in this committee that this is not part of the work plan of property and development at this time, that the rapid zoning bylaw amendments citywide that we've been doing, and the housing accelerator fund, the status quo of the residential infill, which a majority of councillors that still remain on council voted for, and related policy frameworks are that we just actually recently embedded in our Winnipeg complete communities and more, remain, and that we continue on the path that has been directed from council, whether it is the December 2024 council direction on the Housing Accelerator Fund, or really the November 2022 direction to the department to really expedite work around, housing units, housing crisis, and, one of the first motions we supported at committee of the term that we continue the work plan of the department, and that would mean receiving this motion as information. That is my continued thoughts in the matter, despite despite concerns that we have heard from Councillor Orlico and Councillor Dobson on a citywide concern for these matters. I think the work is too important to take property and development off their game. I want council to be obviously unified, including Councillor Dobson, who's a cherished member of this committee, and has been doing a lot of work, as a part of this committee. But I just really think it's important for council to be an honest broker for where we are at the end of the day. And I'm not suggesting anyone's dishonest in taking this message, but I do want to respect the time and the focus we've demanded from this department. And this is just off message of where council has been at, in my opinion. So those are my thoughts on the matter. But do we have a motion?
Are you proposing a motion?
No, she can't use after.
Do you want someone to take the chair?
No, I'm proposing we receive it as information. I assume, given that Councillor Dobson was the author of the motion, he wishes to move, actually.
Well, I'd love to move this motion, but I don't think it would pass in its current place. I think that if you are gonna allow a fourplex, we should automatically include duplexes and triplexes because that should be part of the scope. And then that would mean changing it for instead of fourplex up to fourplex, which would include the other ones because not everywhere can take a fourplex. A threeplex might work, whereas fourplex won't. That would encourage infill. But I also believe that infill should be citywide wherever it's feasible. And right now, the way it looks is mature neighborhoods only. And I have an issue with that. There might be areas of the city which aren't considered mature communities that this would work quite well.
Yes, please. Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, for sure, for bucket 3.2 for the fourplexes,
Yeah.
we will be looking at it citywide, so that will be to you in January, which would be even faster than this.
So then I think I should take this as information at this point.
Okay,
So move by,
Receive as information, that's my motion.
so moved by Councillor Dobson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Next is the subdivision and rezoning of 15 Royal Mint Drive.
traditional, is this in line with the public service recommendation?
Yes, this was, we were supportive and EKT approved it.
Okay, I'll move it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Next is the subdivision rezoning south side of Bridgeland Drive between Bridlewood Road and Prominence Point. Do we have a mover?
Well, same question, public service.
Yes, PPD supportive, Assiniboia approved.
I'll move it.
So moved by Councilor Log. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Subdivision rezoning 473 and 475 Laura Avenue. Do we have a mover?
Same question.
PPD supportive, Counselor supported.
I'll move it.
Mover.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Subdivision rezoning Duval Road, License Road. Do we have a mover?
Administration.
Mark Pete.
So I'll ask, James, do you want to cover the zoning agreement amendment? I can speak to the servicing. Conditions.
Yes, lots of changes on this one, but public hearing went forward. We would just like to suggest some minor amendments so that these changes made at the public hearing work appropriately. So one of the amendments, and we had given it to the clerk, was in the zoning agreement. It was 2A, V, small a. The existing condition that was put forward, the amending condition at the hearing, that excluding projections permitted under the zoning bylaw, the maximum height of any building on the land within 50 feet of the west property line shall not exceed 35 feet. That was an error in the recording. It's actually the east property line is what was under consideration. So the revised replacement would be that excluding projections permitted under the zoning bylaw, the maximum height of any building on the land within 100 feet of the east property line shall not exceed 35 feet.
Go ahead, Councilor Duncan.
Any reason why the distance from the property line changed from 50 to 100?
I have the planner that from the public hearing and who handled the application, Dylan Chisland. So
Thanks. It's just related to the shape of the lot. And so if you're taking it from the east side of the lot in order to maintain the adequate setback to the single family dwelling.
Okay.
So it's not included, you need to change it to 100 feet.
Any further? Do you wish to move? Mark PTA, James Beach.
Sorry to interrupt, Councilor. On the servicing side, there were a number of changes made that were park related and streets related.
Yes.
Myself and staff took the time to review with Dave Donkey from Parks, as well as Cindy Desjardins from Streets, and confirm that we're okay with all the changes, with the exception of providing some clarity in amended motion 10, which was an amendment to the ACG, and I can provide the wording to the clerk. But the new condition would read, the developer shall construct at no cost to the city the intersection of Plessy Road and the proposed public road, restricting movements to right in, right out through geometric design as determined by and to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. So this is just to clarify the intent of committee and word it properly.
So this change, what's the change? Well, yeah, I heard the change, proposed change.
It's just clarifying wording that's actually technical. Not, I think he uses a term like doghead or something in the motion.
Oh,
this is just to provide.
Yeah, we don't want doghead.
Proper or
in the,
whatever that I'm probably misquoting what the word was because I don't have the computer in front of me. Pork chop.
Pork chop.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, that's a big departure.
Okay, I'd like to move this with the proposed amendments from the public service.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The ACG.
Any opposed? That was carried unanimously. Zoning agreement 1811 John Brebeuf Place. Is there a mover?
Question, my same question from the public service.
Yep, public service support and the community committee supported.
I'll move it.
So moved by Councilor Lucker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. 611 633 Wellington Crescent. Is there a mover?
Public service support, community committee supported.
I'll move it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Subdivision and rezoning 823 LeMay Avenue and land located between 35 de la Digue Avenue and
One. I know the answer from the public service on this one. I would move the community committee recommendation unless, well, I would be ready to move it. I'll put that on the table, I guess, for discussion.
Councilor Allard has a motion in order. Councilor Duncan discussion.
Although Councilor.
No, I'm
familiar that I'm not, so if I can get something from the public
Yeah,
service.
administration. if you-
Yeah, and I don't mean to move. It's like hypothetically, we'd be ready to move.
All right, yeah, Real Community Committee 823 LeMay, 22.7 acres currently vacant. The application was subdivision rezoning from rural residential 5 to residential multifamily large. The proposal was 5,000 beds and a 250 unit assisted living, a significant amount of variances. The public service recommended support, however, reducing the multifamily large to multifamily small with conditions. There were approximately 151 people in opposition, 12 in support. The community committee rejected the application. Due process was undertaken and public service is staying where we are.
So my offer is on the table for a motion. I don't want to move without discussion if there's more discussion to be had.
Can you talk to me about your motion, Councilor Allard?
Well, I probably spoke to the applicant and the public service for about, well, at least 40 minutes about cemeteries and
Oh, wow.
there are bodies on this parcel of land. There could be a number of them, and I wanted to know that piece was being dealt with, and I wasn't satisfied with the answers that I got. And that was my reasoning.
And so is there any response? That in the public service?
Public records.
I guess
This one may end up in court, so.
I could speak to that in terms of any approval provided by the city in terms of building permits, et cetera, would be superseded by the province's authority in terms of regulating where they could build. And if there are suspected remains, obviously they wouldn't be allowed.
Which there are.
to live in this areas.
And I had seen no reference to it in the bylaw, and that was part of my rationale.
The province,
Heritage resource.
Yeah.
sorry, that doesn't follow, it isn't that they, sometimes the prevention is to build, but in the case of the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, there was a mitigation plan around that.
Certainly.
So,
You are correct. They could come up with a plan to, if there are remains, remove them and relocate them. But in terms of that.
I think there are though.
your argument is that
Are.
we don't have that duty, it is a provincial duty?
There,
Yeah.
again, we would, if we were aware that there were bodies buried within a site, we certainly would flag that to the province and would likely not approve a permit within that footprint. But it's the heritage resource branch that again has the authority on this.
Okay,
I
well,
can
Councilor
elaborate.
Allard, in terms of your motion,
I'll move it.
that brought to your attention that there are remains.
Yeah,
It's been brought to my attention too, so,
I would like
you wanna-
more certainty on that. And given that, I would like to move the motion that I moved the community committee.
And what did you do with it at community committee? You, so it's here, but what, was there discussion on this?
Oh, there was quite a bit of discussion on it. There was there were delegates that referred to it. Both the applicant and the delegates confirmed the cemetery site. Both had similar maps. One of the persons who appeared in delegation was suggesting that the current footprint build from what is recommended by the public service would actually encroach into, that's what the delegate had said, the area, the buffer area. And the applicants did also recognize and had a presentation where there was sort of like the site and then different circles in terms of where there may or may not be remains outside of the core cemetery portion. And so we talked about it quite a bit. We went back and forth with public service, and I proposed not moving forward based on not having what I felt was enough certainty on this question.
I can elaborate if you like. So I can completely understand the concerns over the site itself with there being a cemetery known with specific parameters identified by the province. Just to clarify that the proposal as presented for RMFL is not supportable, therefore the buildings themselves or their placement are not supportable by the public service. We're recommending a look at RMFS and a complete redesign. That's just first point. Second point is that his historic resources branch knows where the cemetery is and has restricted an area around it by 50 meters, no development whatsoever. They'll be putting a caveat on the title of the property. We are also mirroring the caveat in the zoning agreement so that any application for anything to occur on the property gets circulated to the province. They have the authority to say yes or no. There also are repatriation or however it's consecration. If there's any bone found outside of that area, they would have to follow a plan similar to the Museum for Human Rights. The assurances within the bylaw is that the zoning agreement must be registered on title prior to approval of the rezoning.
i.e. over the province.
And then as soon as the zoning development officer would receive any application, they package it and send it to the province. The province is the authority.
A good intervention. Yeah. You've changed my mind. Yeah, I mean, that's the work I used to do.
I'll withdraw.
Somebody has to.
I'll withdraw a motion if I had moved one. If somebody wants to move another one.
No, I mean, go ahead. I mean, you know, I think it's the fidelity of Real Community Committee that you would be seeking, and that's fair.
Okay, so then
I'm opposed. You know, I'll occupy the space of you know, there's an applicant. They're going to work through the existing processes on title. that we have in the province, and, you know, I'll hear from people, no doubt, because I have no question that all surrounding the riverbank in Winnipeg are burial grounds. So that I have no question on. Both things can be true. You have to have manners to deal with that. We have a manner to deal with it. So it might not be perfect. And we might have to do more thinking on it. But for now, go ahead, Councilor Large. Is that so moved by you?
It doesn't need to be like
You're amenable
I'm like, I'll retract any motion if I've moved one.
right now.
And I would,
Coming to this committee is real community committees that did not concern the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service, right?
yeah, and if something else comes forward, I may not support it.
And instead, because the recommendation of the public service at the time of your hearing, right, was that the subdivision proposed under development application DAZ-SZ be approved, right? And that the Winnipeg zoning bylaw be amended. No, they approved for preparation as a plan. Then that is your report, yes. And then Real Community Committee came in and new day. And they said, no. Yes.
We recommended approval with a reduction in the density. Instead of multifamily large, we recommended multifamily small.
Yes.
With a series of conditions.
And that's what's coming before us, and you're prepared to move?
I will move, I'm prepared to move it. I'm also prepared to entertain other motions.
I thought you were talking about a wholesale change. So if you're prepared to move, let's go.
Okay, well, I'll move the Real Community Committee recommendation,
Okay, with the
which means no.
RTA intervening.
Please.
Not intervening, but, and just for clarity.
Yeah.
We recommended approval, community committee recommended against. If the intention is to recommend approval, and if committee is of the mind to recommend approval, I would add a clause that water and waste wanted to be added, if I could at this time.
Yes.
Which is just for clarity in terms of potential capacity issues, but it would be to add to Schedule D, Section 1, a new clause after 10, which reads clause 11. The Water and Waste Department does not reserve wastewater capacity, sewer, or treatment plant. I know. Capacity is only assigned to a project when a permit application for the development proposal is accepted. Once capacity of the wastewater system is reached, permit applications for additional development are no longer approved.
My life. My new life.
I'll provide you with that wording.
Okay, anything further?
So just for clarification, Madam Chair, the motion right now is Councilor Lardis saying to not concur with the recommendation of Real Community Committee and go with the Public Services recommendation of RMF small.
Yeah.
Well, that was my understanding. My understanding was
Which is how many units?
to not go forward with the public service recommendation either. That was my understanding of public hearing.
Okay, and then, okay, so in terms of getting something in order, Councillor Duncan, I think, is prepared to move.
I'm not.
You're not.
I'm not. No. I'm no.
Okay, so we do need a motion. If someone wants to take the chair, I'm prepared to move the Real Community Committee, what came out of the Real Community Committee.
See, that's not my recollection of
What happened at Real?
what happened at Real is I thought that we said no.
Please.
Just a straight no. It wasn't the public service recommendation.
5 minutes has been requested as a health break.
Sure.
Sorry, technical, thanks, John.
Good afternoon now and welcome back to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development for this Friday, September 13th. When we left off, Councillor Rollins was in the chair. This was scheduled. She did have a prior engagement. As stated before, I'm Councillor Evan Duncan now, going to be chairing the meeting. We do need a motion For that, I do believe.
For item number 20, I would like to move the community committee recommendation.
Okay, we'll deal with item number 20 of a motion. Counselor Dobson moving the community committee recommendation.
Yeah, to be clear, this
Yes.
is not proceeding.
It's as you voted on.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify because I thought there was a miscommunication on what we had decided at Riel, but yes, so Councilor Dobson's moved.
Yeah. So we'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried.
I think there's a new business.
Turn to the clerk here.
Yes, there's one item of new business before the committee goes in camera that was circulated to all members of the committee.
Is it long?
It's 2 pages.
Oh, okay. New business.
Soon as it comes up.
Yeah, I got it.
Apologize for the delay. I'm just logging into my email now.
Is the public service in possession of this motion?
You can forward it to the director.
Thank you.
And can we hear from the public service on this? I know you may be interested in seeing it now, maybe not.
We'll give the public service a moment here to review.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Would you like to join me?
Oh. Yes, Gordon Rich.
Okay. Can you just confirm?
Counselors, have you had a chance to have a look at the new business?
Yeah, I have, but I would like to hear from public service before. I think I'll be moving it, but I would like to hear from the public service.
I can maybe just add, so we, our real estate, branch and, Housing Accelerator Fund both, had a chance to look at this motion. Generally supportive. The only thing I'll note is just that, item 5, plan review, just want to flag that the intent of the motion was to accelerate the approval process. 1, 2, and 3, by adopting those, it essentially takes out a reporting mechanism or a report back to the community committee. So with the addition of 5, plan approval does require to go back to community committee. So it is adding 1 layer back into this process for approval. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Just want to flag that we will have a requirement for the community committee to approve some of these developments. Generally, most of what the housing Accelerator Fund is working on are properties that are going to require subdivision rezoning anyhow, so it's going to go to community committee. No comments beyond that. I just want to let you know that the plan approval is another administrative or another political layer that
Include a condition for plan approval.
Yeah, okay.
So, Councilor Lard, question?
I'm just weighing the plan approval, the benefit and like how much delay can a plan approval committee mean?
Well, it depends on the circumstance, right?
Yeah.
If community committee is willing to schedule a special meeting, but otherwise we're limited by your schedule.
Yeah.
Right, just make it administrative. Well, I don't think that.
I think the intent was there may have been counselors that were concerned about how this would move forward by delegating authority to the public service and maybe not having to say in some projects. But again, understanding councilors don't know everything that being worked on for the developments. It's assumed that, you know, most of the properties that are gonna move forward are gonna require subdivision rezoning anyhow.
Okay, well, if this is there to assuage the concerns of some of my colleagues, I'm prepared to move the motion as it's been presented.
Okay, looks like there's support for that, so Counselor Millard moves the new business.
Madam Clerk, it's a little bit long to read out, so. Oh, so I move new
Let's
business.
have it read out, or are we just gonna go as is? I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, no, I'm good, yeah.
Okay.
It's just, I'm thinking about the public and how there will be no record of this anywhere
Any minutes?
in the minutes, which, how long did that usually take? Maximum.
Myself, Monday.
Maximum.
Okay.
Okay, so relatively soon.
We can meet halfway on this. Can we do the therefore be it resolved?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Be it resolved that the real estate policy framework be amended as follows. One, the chief administrative officer be delegated authority to declare city-owned land surplus that is intended for affordable housing, subject to the circulation requirements set out in the declaration as surplus and sale of property policy. Two, that the chief administrative officer be delegated authority to approve any sale or lease for any amount regardless of appraised value for city-owned land that is intended for affordable housing, subject to a sale/lease condition that the land must remain affordable housing through the life of the agreement. Three, that the evaluation criteria for the sale or lease of city-owned land intended for affordable housing be as follows, subject to any minor modifications necessary to implement this intent. A, that the total offering price and potential tax revenue generated by the proposed development 5%. B, total number of units 15%. C, evidence of available funding to complete the proposal 25%. D, experience and or history of successful projects and endeavors carried out by the proponent 25%. E, social impacts of the project, including affordability criteria that include I, less than 80% of the median market rate for the area in line with CMHC's Affordable Housing Fund criteria maintained for 20 years, or II, at province of Manitoba affordable housing rental rates maintained for 20 years, 30%. Or that prior to city land being declared surplus, the Housing Accelerator Fund Office be directed to review the land for housing potential. 5, that all lease or sale agreements intended for affordable housing and coordinated through the HAF program include a condition for plan approval by the relevant community committee. 6, that the proposed amendments remained active until January 1st, 2027.
All right, so moved.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is also carried. We'll now go into camera. Could I have a motion?
I move a motion to go in camera.
So moved by Councilor Millard, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. We'll ask that the members of the public leave the gallery. Thank you very much.
They've got this.
Welcome back to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Developments. Appreciate your patience. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Councilor Dobson moves to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Appreciate your time today. Enjoy your weekend.